Check, check. One second. Where is Twitch? Okay, I can definitely turn up the sound. Check, check. Check, check. Okay, let's go with that. Whoop. We good? We're good. So, last we left off, I was literally right about to finish. Yes, what action was the victim really about to take in that moment? Can we determine whither the young man's gaze was directed? First, consider the victim's location within his cabin. That's easy, I remember every detail of that room. I mean, yes, I spent quite a lot of time in the wardrobe, but still. That cabin has been my home for this entire voyage. So this is how the cabin looked last night when Pavlova visited. Yes, that's exactly how it was. Are we ready then, Mr. Naruhodo? Yes! One thing I've learned today is that a simple gaze can reveal all manner of truths. Not only that, in order to draw the right conclusion, you can't afford to be out by even a little bit when you're following the gaze to where it lands. So when you turned away from Miss Pavlova, what exactly was Kazuma looking at? Probably the wardrobe, right? Considering everything that had happened last night, certainly it may have looked as though Kazuma was going to ring the bell cord. Yes, however, what is directly beside the bell cord? The wardrobe. The wardrobe? And more importantly, what was inside the wardrobe? The man's great friend, sleeping soundly. Ah! Miss Pavlova, please think back very carefully. What were Mr. Asugi's exact words last night? Give me a moment, I could use another opinion here. Another opinion? Yes, but not from a member of the crew. No, Mr. Asugi intended to consult his close friend on the matter. To see if between them they might be able to help in some way, no doubt. Oh no. Sadly, we can't know the truth for certain now. It's too late for that. But I wish you had made sure of what Mr. Asugi was looking at. Things may have ended very differently if you had. Miss Pavlova, I want to thank you for finally admitting the truth, but unfortunately, the truth is a man lost his life because of what you did. And that will never change. I hope you'll never forget that. I'm sorry, really, I'm so sorry. What have I done? Also, sorry we're starting like 15 minutes late. It's definitely because I was busy today, and not that I was playing Master Duel all day. Actually, it was a bit of both. But yeah, Master Duel is very fun. Honestly considered streaming that again today, so I had an excuse to keep climbing the ranked ladder, but this game is still fun, and I still want to play it. And I don't want to like burn out on Master Duel. First class passage. What will happen to Miss Pavlova now, then? Once we reach Great Britain, she'll be handed over to the British police at Scotland Yard. About the fact that she ran away from Russia, won't the Russians try to repatriate her? Apparently the English detective can speak to the immigration office and sort all that out. Mr. Sholmes can do that? So she won't be going back to Russia then? No, I don't think so. Even if she wanted to return in the future, I doubt she would be able to. She ran away, so now she's in exile for life. I see. Seaman Stroganov? Wanted to help our angel no matter what, but I didn't think about you, about how you lost a good friend. I will go with Nina. I will give myself to British police. That's kind of you. In the meantime, thank you for letting me go free again. Cosmo's death feels like such a waste, but... well, do what you can for Miss Pavlova, won't you? Da. Well, I'm afraid you need to pack now. We're due to arrive in Hong Kong tomorrow. As much as it pains me, I'm going to have to hand you over to the consul to arrange your passage back to Japan. Yes, I did stow away after all. I couldn't really expect any different. So you should get back to your cabin now. Are we not going to get like a hold it? Oh. It looks like my study tour to Great Britain is over before it's even begun then. To think that only days ago Kazuma and I were laughing together about how we'd tear up the streets of London. It seems like a distant memory now. Oh, what's that? Is it someone weeping? Susato. Naruhodo-san, I didn't know you had returned. Oh, well, I haven't been back long. Inspector Hosonaga just told me I should pack, you know, ready to leave the ship tomorrow and all that. I still can't believe this has happened. I can't believe someone's life can be over just like that. He had such grand ideas for this visit to Great Britain, so many dreams. And now they've been cruelly taken away, just as he has. I thought I could never forgive the person responsible, but now we know the truth, that it was just an accident. Just a silly series of mishaps. It's too much, Naruhodo-san, it's just too much. Yes, I know. I wish there was something I could say. Inspector, my duty was to see Asogi-san safely to Great Britain, but I failed. He caused his two closest friends great pain and suffering as a result, and let everyone down. I will do anything to make up for my terrible blunder. Nobody blames you, Inspector. And I'm free again now, at least. Huh? Ah ha 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 ha! Surprised, Mr. Naruhodo? What is the meaning of this? Oh, a trifling matter. Simply that in my head, I think I shall always picture you wearing those shackles. Without them, the balance seems all wrong. It's distracting. Sorry. I decided to restore them, for old time's sake, shall we say. You are a stowaway, after all. Ah ha 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 ha. He thinks this is funny? I mean, it kinda is. Mr. Sholmes. We do appreciate all your assistance. I'd like to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Not at all, not at all. And though it's a little late, may I offer my sincerest condolences. The loss of your companion is truly heartrending. I hope that you will be able to fill some of his aspirations in his honor. I'm afraid that won't be possible. We shall be disembarking at the next port in Hong Kong. We have to return to Japan and make a full report about everything that's happened. What? Wait a minute. It's just me that has to go back, isn't it? I mean, I was the stowaway. The terms of this study tour were negotiated by the Department of Justice in both Great Britain and Japan. It was to be one lawyer and one assistant. Was to be. In the light of Mr. Asogi's unfortunate death, I'm afraid the study tour can no longer go ahead. Oh no, I don't care for me, but... Poor Susato-san. My dear fellows, the majority of problems have an extremely simple solution, you know. All you require is one lawyer, and the study tour can continue, surely. But there's no one else with the necessary qualifications, Mr. Sholmes. We know of no other lawyer. Qualifications, you say? Any qualifications obtained in your own country will be of little value in Great Britain, I'm afraid. Oh, but anyway, the voyage to London still promises a good month of time. Ample opportunity, I would say, to find yourselves another suitable lawyer. Yes. Miss Susato? Yes. Do you think perhaps I might be able to do it? Ah, but you're not a lawyer, Mr. Naruhodo. Oh, unless... Are you studying law? No, I'm not, but... I'm sorry, in that case, I don't think there's even a chance it could work. But as I said, there is still more than a month before we reach England's shores. Isn't that right, Mr. Naruhodo? Yes, I have a month in which to study to learn what I must to become a lawyer in Great Britain. Mr. Naruhodo, that's ridiculous. Are you seriously suggesting anybody could learn all of that in just 40 days? There's only one way to find out. I would work my fingers to the bone, Inspector, every single day. Will you let me try? And if by the time we reach Great Britain I haven't learned enough to be recognized as a lawyer, I'll take whatever punishment is deemed appropriate. But why put yourself in such a difficult position? For Kazuma. He said that there was something he had to do in Great Britain, and that he would sacrifice anything to make it happen. He was passionate about it. I can't let all that passion just come to nothing. And anyway, it's for my own benefit too. I will become a lawyer. I have to. What do you say, Miss Susato? I think it's a wonderful idea. Thank you. So what does our bespectacled inspector friend have to say? Are you serious? One lawyer and one assistant. The numbers are indisputable. No, no, no. It's madness. Yet fascinating, wouldn't you agree? Fascinating? Duty and rules are the dull routine of existence that we all abhor. Give us interest, give us fascination. Speak for yourself. Besides, qualifications are no measure of a man. What matters is his character, no? And you've witnessed ample evidence of this man's exemplary character today with your own eyes. From the early hours of the morning, this morning until this very moment now. Despite contending with the passing of his close companion and despite the accusation of guilt, this man has shown resourcefulness, intelligence, above all, courage. Very well. I'll think of a clever way to word my report to the Department of Justice. Inspector. After all, I did just make a promise, didn't I? I said that I'd do anything at all to make up for my shortcomings here. Oh, thank you, Inspector. If you'll excuse me, I must pay a visit to the captain's quarters, I think. I need to discuss what to do next and how best to make my report. Are you really prepared to attempt this, Mr. Naruhodo? Yes, I'm going to try. I wonder, would you consider teaching me what I need to know? Everything about being a lawyer? I would be delighted to help you. I am a judicial assistant after all. Thank you. And, Mr. Naruhodo, I'd like you to take charge of this. What? Me? Are you sure? I'm sure it's what Kazuma-sama would have wanted. Its name is Karuma. It's a great sword that's been in the Yasugi clan for generations. Very well, I accept. I'll treasure it always. So then, Miss Susato, it seems we'll be working together for some time to come yet? It will be an honor, Mr. Naruhodo. And for the next 40 days, I shan't grant you a single minute of freedom. We shall fill every spare moment with study. Yes, that's exactly what I need. But, before we begin, I have an earnest favor to ask of you too. Goodness, what is it? Please throw me to the ground 3 times. Oh, what? I should never have doubted you. You were Kazuma-sama's closest friend. Of course you would never have done anything to hurt him. That should have been obvious to me from the start. But I allowed suspicion to get the better of me. No matter how upset I was feeling, it was completely unforgivable behavior. No, you weren't shocked. You just found out about me stowing away. And the cabin door was locked from the inside. No, I won't let you make excuses for me. Whatever the circumstances, I should never have thrown you. And not just once, but 5 times. Ha, that number keeps creeping up, doesn't it? Please, you must. Just take hold of me and throw me. Do it. Don't even think about it. No, 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 no. I don't even know how. I've never thrown anyone in my life. Very wise, Mr. Naruhodo. It isn't a skill one acquires without considerable training. Oh, Mr. Sholmes. I observed your throwing technique several times with great interest. I confess I was most impressed. When did he see that? I presume that would be a form of Japanese wrestling? Oh, well, in a way. It's not wrestling, but my own interpretation of an ancient jujutsu technique. Apparently it's called the Susato Takedown. It leaves your head swimming, believe me. How beguiling. I am a practitioner of the combative arts myself. I am a somewhat accomplished boxer. There he goes, dancing around again. I wonder if you'd be so kind as to instruct me on the technique of your arresting throw. Yes, I'd be honored. Interesting that you use like the British spelling of the word honored. Now let us not dally. Demonstrate, my dear madame. Or madam. Oh, of course. Are you ready, Mr. Naruhodo? Sorry. Hi-ya! As you can see, you throw from the abdomen. Oh yes, arresting indeed, and that is what you termed the Susato Takedown, is it? Actually, no, that was a Susato Squash. In my groggy state of consciousness, a scene from an evening recently spent with Kazuma flickered into my mind. Aww. Karuma? That's right, it's a prized sword that's been passed down through generations of the Asogi clan. I can't believe you managed to get permission to bring it with you. I mean, taking a katana on a study tour is more than a little irregular, surely. A Japanese man's sword is his soul, Ryunosuke. I can't be parted from my katana. Karuma guides me, I truly believe that. So its name compels its wielder to slice evil in two? Not that you would need much compelling. On that subject, there's something very important that I have to do in Great Britain, and I'll sacrifice anything to make it happen. I'd appreciate you seeing it through with me. Of course I will. Whatever it is, I'll see it through to the end with you. I knew you wouldn't let me down. That important thing he had to do, I still don't know what that was. But I'm going to see the place for myself and work it out. In Great Britain's capital, London. Dun dun dun. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next case, I think. Yep, let's save. I don't know why I'm umming. We only have the one save file. The Adventure of the Runaway Room. We'll start playing from the start of the episode. So we've had one episode that's all trial and one episode that's all investigation. I bet this is going to be our first one that actually, like, blends the two.
Of the late last century, I am faced by the events of a certain bitter winter.
I'll let this voice talk.
A murder in a carriage as it sped through dense London fog in the dead of night. Though the victim and the perpetrator were the only ones inside, there were multiple witnesses to the crime itself. However, none could have imagined at the time that such a seemingly obvious case as this would end in such a horrendous manner. My friend, Mr. Herlock Sholmes, once said of the incident, I believe that perhaps that case was indeed the prelude. The beginning of a long concerto that impressive Japanese student and I were to play together.
Amazing. Is this really just a railway station?
Railway station or not, I've never seen such an enormous building before.
And look at all the steam locomotives.
Why do these Japanese characters have very British voices? I mean, I know the actual reason is just that it's probably a British voice studio, but in universe, it's weird.
I feel like I'm dreaming.
So this is the capital of Great Britain.
So, where to?
Oh, hello.
Climb aboard. I'll take you wherever you want to go.
In that case, the Supreme Court in Whitehall, if you wouldn't mind.
My pleasure. I suppose you're visiting students from abroad, eh?
Yes.
Thought so. Well then, I hope you enjoy your stay. And welcome to the centre of the world, Great Britain's mighty capital, London.
London. February 9:21 a.m. British Supreme Court, Lord Chief Justice's office. What an incredible place! It's so imposing, it's almost suffocating. This place is breathtaking, it looks like a fortress. There are some stone buildings like this in Japan now, of course, but they've only been built in the few short decades since we've opened our borders to the outside world. Gotta stretch. An authentic example like this has quite a different impact, wouldn't you agree? A far cry from the wood and paper most of our buildings are constructed from. It's certainly unfamiliar, but I think there's more to the differences than just construction materials. What is this place again? This is the Lord Chief Justice's house, Naruhodo-san, in the Supreme Court of Great Britain. The Lord Chief Justice? We had instructions to report here at this time if circumstances were different. We were supposed to let the Lord Chief Justice know that we had arrived from Japan. But Kazuma can't. No. So instead we are here in a different capacity. As envoys to report the news of Kazuma-sama's death, yes. And having delivered his or her message, an envoy's duty is done. So we'd have to return to Japan. If we want to remain here in Great Britain, I have to take Kazuma's place as the law student selected for the study tour. Yes, which means you need that the requisite qualifications as a lawyer, which is what I've been studying for. here in Great Britain, it is the Lord Chief Justice who appoints lawyers. So that's the second reason why we're here, to have you officially recognized as a lawyer. It's the only way we'll be able to remain here in London. I hope I'm up to scratch. Good morning. Sorry for keeping you. Oh. I trust you aren't too exhausted after your long voyage from Japan. It seems I'm 1 hour, 12 minutes, and 47 seconds late. My apologies. Oh, no, don't mention it. We're never happier than when we're standing around with nothing much to do. How fortunate. So, introductions. I am Male Strongheart, Lord Chief Justice of the British Empire. And I feel like a little mouse under an elephant's foot. Mr. Naruhodo, don't be a mouse. It's an honor to meet you, Lord Chief Justice Strongheart. I'm Ryunosuke Naruhodo from the Empire of Japan. Well, Mr. Naruhodo. Welcome to London, the capital of our glorious British Empire. Ah, yes, thank you. Converse. And let's talk about London. So, what are your impressions of our capital so far? How do you like London? Oh, hell. I've been so nervous ever since I got here that I can't remember a single thing about the city. It's simply splendid, isn't it, Mr. Naruhodo? Oh? We had a wonderful view of some of London's streets from the carriage on the way here from the station. Everything is so impressive and grand, I must say I'm almost lost for words. I'm glad to hear you like it. The city boasts tramways, piped water, and gas, even cables supplying electricity. We spearhead every revolutionary new technology in the world. Every visitor to London is astounded. Oh yes, astounded is the word. Thanks for saving me there, Susato-san. But everyone seems so jolly and full of vigor. Yes. There's much excitement about the upcoming great exhibition we will be hosting here in London. Great exhibition? Cultural and technological achievements from around the globe are to be exhibited here in our great city. It will be the greatest spectacle of its kind in history, and will make Paris's World Fair look like a toy shop. Gosh, I can hardly imagine how magnificent it's going to be. Great Britain's capital city is nothing but magnificent. London is the center of the modern world, even if you do say so yourself. The sun will never set on our great empire. Whew, that's wrong. Perhaps it is fate that in these progressive times we welcome visitors from the land of the rising sun. Let's talk about law students. Lord Chief Justice, I think you were expecting a student of law for the study tour, weren't you? Absolutely. A Mr. Kazuma Asugi, if my memory serves. That's right. The British government has already been telegraphed a full report on the situation. I understand the young man lost his life aboard the steamship bound for our shores. That's amazing. The news reached him before we even arrived. My country naturally extends its deepest condolences to yours. Oh, thank you. And you honored this appointment specifically to inform me of the news? Yes. We are here in the capacity of envoys from Japan to report the sad news in person. They tell me you Japanese are a people of protocol and courtesy, and I see that it's true. And it is with some regret that I must inform you that the death of the young lawyer means the study tour arrangement can no longer proceed. If you would just hear us out, Lord Strongheart. What do you have to say, madame? Or madam? Would the British pronounce it madam or madame? Because I think of madame as like having an E with the little apostrophe over it at the end. It's about the study tour. Mr. Naruhodo here would like to make a proposal. Would he now? Well, Mr. Naruhodo. Is it then the moment of truth? Continuing the study tour. The thing is, Lord Strongheart, I was wondering if perhaps you would consider allowing the study tour to go ahead. Don't misunderstand me. Britain would ideally like to see the tour go ahead, but without a lawyer from your country, there's nothing to be done. Well, in that case, what if there was someone else? Another lawyer from Japan, I mean. Is there something I don't know? Only a single lawyer was invited to Great Britain from your country, and that was Mr. Asugi. At least that's what I've been led to understand. Well, the thing is, this really isn't going well at all. I just can't seem to find the right words to say to this man. Mr. Naruhodo. I could ruin things here if I'm not careful. What am I going to say? There is someone else here from Japan who could be described as a lawyer. It's me. I mean, we have to say it's us, right? It's me. I can do it. Is that so? I mean, I don't actually have any qualifications as such, but no qualifications, you say, and yet you still claim to be a lawyer. I have acted as a lawyer in court before, only once as it happens. Alright, Kazuma, help me, and I was the accused, glossing over the details. I've been spending every spare moment on the journey here to Great Britain studying. I've learned all about British law and court proceedings while I was on board the SS Buria. The voyage from Japan is some 50 days, I believe. Not what you might call a full education. To become a qualified lawyer here in Britain, not only do you need a university degree in law, you must also complete several years of training. I realize it's far too short a period of time, but I can't just go back to Japan. Kazuma, Mr. Asugi's journey had only just begun. Coming here on the study tour was all he thought about. I have to carry on and do everything he planned to do. I know it must sound like I have an overly inflated opinion of myself, but I would do anything to prove that I have what it takes. Any test you care to set me. Just one chance, that's all I'm asking for, please. 31 seconds. Sorry. Your opening statement there, Mr. Naruhodo, it was 31 seconds long. Not too brief, not too protracted, a perfectly judged appeal, I would say. Which is a skill that would stand you in good stead as a lawyer. Oh, thank you. You're willing to put those words to trial, are you? Well, I'm all for entertainment. Huh? Well, let me ask you one thing first, sir. Yes? You say you intend to do everything Mr. Asugi planned to do. Are you firmly set on that path? Well, yes, that's my intention. I see. Am I imagining things, or did his expression just alter a fraction there all of a sudden? Very well. You have your wish, I'll give you a chance. A test to become a specially certified lawyer. Whether you pass or fail is entirely down to you. Really? What's this test? So what form will the test take exactly? Tell me, Mr. Naruhodo, what do you consider the role of a lawyer to be? Well, defending people, of course. Well said. So, let's have you defend someone. Huh? Your timing is perfect, in fact. There's an apt trial about to begin later today. No advocate has been appointed for the defense as yet, so this will be welcome news. Today? Straight away? If you manage to secure a verdict of not guilty, you'll have passed my test. What could be simpler? How do I get myself into these situations? Well, could I ask what sort of trial is it, Lord Strongheart? Yes, good question. I remember. It's a murder trial. A murder? An extremely simple case, I understand. You really can't lose. That's easy to say, but I should mention, just in case, If the defendant is found guilty, he will of course be sentenced to capital punishment. Capital punishment? He'll be put to death? In Great Britain, murderers are sent to the gallows without exception. Presumably you read that much in your short C-based introduction to British law. We can't possibly agree to such a test. We would be toying with a man's life. I am the Lord Chief Justice, and I have decided it's acceptable. But you can't do that. Can you? There's no need to overcomplicate this. All you have to do is ensure that you don't lose. So the defendant may live or die depending on how well I perform in court. If I lose, he'll be hanged. Mr. Naruhodo, you come to me claiming to be a lawyer. If you want me to take you seriously, you need to prove you're willing to do a lawyer's job. You say you intend to see through the will of your compatriot, Mr. Asogi. I would like to understand just how far you're willing to go in order to make that happen. He's testing my resolve. What's the matter? You've fallen silent. I'm sorry, but time is pressing. The trial begins shortly. I need an answer from you now. What's it to be? What do I say? Do I agree to this absurd test? I'll do it. Of course we're going to do it. Alright then, if I have to give you a decision now, my answer is I can't do it. I can't get the words out. 15 seconds. Your decision making needs work if you want to be a lawyer. That was way too slow. So it's as I suspected, is it? Sorry. You have noble intentions but lack the resolve to see them through. The test is cancelled. Thank you for stopping by. Go ahead and acquire your ticket. Go ahead. No. Yeah. Go and acquire your ticket for passage back to the east tomorrow. This conversation is over. Yes, Lord Strongheart. Thank you for offering me a chance. Mr. Naruhodo, I'm sorry, Miss Susato, but what could I do? It's alright, I understand. You do? It's not an easy decision to choose whether to defend a man in these circumstances. But resolve has absolutely nothing to do with it. What are you trying to say, madame? I think what Miss Susato means is that no matter how badly I'd like to be recognized as a lawyer and stay here in Great Britain, to risk another man's life by treating his one and only chance at a trial so trivially would be utterly unforgivable, and I feel exactly the same way. I'm sure the defendant won't see this trial as a test, as some kind of experiment. A lawyer must fight for his clients in court day after day, but for each one of those clients, the particular day they stand in the dock may be the only chance they have to fight to prove their innocence. No, I was wrong. I'm not qualified to do that job yet. I'm sorry for wasting your precious time, Lord Chief Justice. Hold it. Wait, Mr. Naruhodo. Oh, was there something else? It's approximately 20 minutes by carriage to the Old Bailey from here. If you leave immediately, you should still be there in time. But I just said that I was quite serious in what I told you. The defendant in this case has literally no one to advocate for him. What? At this point, he can't hope to find someone to represent him. The trial will begin without a defense. And if that happens, there's only one possible outcome. He will receive the most severe sentence the judge can pass down. But that's awful. But that is the truth. Why does it have to be like this? Please don't expect an answer to every question. The cold, hard truth of the matter is that there is only one person now with the chance to save this man from a very miserable end. And that is you. I'm really his only hope? So, what do you say now, madame? Me? What do you mean, Lord Strongheart? You said it wasn't an easy decision to choose whether to defend a man in these circumstances, and I agree. but in my estimation, it is purely and simply a matter of resolve. Oh. The time is up here. I have a meeting to attend. I must leave in 2 minutes and 16 seconds. So, venture into our great city and enjoy yourselves. He's gone. The Old Bailey. If we're going to do this, Mr. Naruhodo, we must leave at once. Let's go to the Old Bailey. Defendant's antechamber. Oh, thank goodness we're in time. There's still 15 minutes until the trial begins. I never knew a horse-drawn carriage could go so fast. I thought my teeth were gonna rattle loose. Did you hear what I said to the driver when we climbed aboard? Get us to our destination in 5 minutes, driver, and there's a guinea in it for you. It's one of my favorite lines from Herlock Sholmes stories, and it worked quite perfectly. I'm not sure why you're so pleased. I thought we were going to die, and we had to pay gold for the privilege. Well, at least we arrived here before the trial started. Yes, I suppose there's that. Anyway, I don't understand it. The court clerk said the defendant should be here, but there's no sign of him at all. So this is the Old Bailey. Even this room for defendants to wait in is grand. Are you alright, Mr. Naruhodo? I'm feeling tense, that's all. This place gives me the same sense of foreboding that I remember from the Supreme Court in Japan. An oppressive air, almost as if the building itself is going to crush whoever is about to be sentenced. Feels like only yesterday that I was the one about to be crushed. Yes, whoever the man you to defend is, I imagine he's feeling very alone at this moment. Top of the morning to you, madam, sir. What are yous doing following me here? Tings are fair desperate, are they? Sorry? Would you look at those expressionless faces? From the East, are yas? We're from Japan, yes. Ah, Japan, is it? Right, say no more. So, how much do yous need? No, we're just here because... No need to explain, fella. I've been there before myself, so I have. No place to go, nothing to eat. Barely a penny to your name. And all while in a strange, faraway land. Well, actually, we haven't found a place to stay yet, no. 'Tis grand, 'tis grand. Let me start by giving yous 1,000 guineas. Say nothing now. 1,000 guineas? Please, Miss Susato, you don't have to shout. But 1,000 guineas is enough to build an entire mansion at the most prestigious area of Tokyo. What? 'Tis nothing to me at all. I like to ensure I have sufficient funds to weather a rainy day, you see. I've enough wealth to buy the city of London 2 or 3 times over. Could that much rain even fall in one day? Well, even so, we couldn't possibly accept such a large sum of money. Ah, that hit me in the eye. Don't get me wrong, fella. I'm not giving it to you no strings attached. I'll be wanting you to do something for me. Oh? To be honest, 'tis a little embarrassing. The trial that's about to begin, you see, is for me good self here, I'll be in the dock. So now what I want you to do is come along with me and stand there beside me. Officially, you'd be my lawyer, but that's just a little detail now. Oh, well, the thing is, don't worry about a ting. All you have to do is stand up there next to me, nothing more. Otherwise, you see, the trial is going to start without me having any kind of representation at all. So it was true, the Lord Chief Justice wasn't just making it all up. I'm terribly sorry to have to ask, but does that mean you're the defendant in this trial? Bluster and blazes, do yous not know who I am? Me, one of London's biggest names? No, sorry, we've only just arrived in the city, you see. I see. I suppose it isn't altogether impossible. Well, just next to Hyde Park, there in the center of London, is another beautiful park. Sorry, a park? What? 'Tis called Gilded Park, full of blossom and flowers in the spring and singing birds and whatnot. I donated it to the city, so I did. Ah, an entire park in central London? A city of smiles, that's my vision for London. There's nothing Magnus McGilded wouldn't do for the city and its queer old people. That's amazing, I mean really extraordinary. Ah, but now they've the gall to say I'm a good-for-nothing criminal, me, Magnus McGilded. What is the matter with the London police, I ask you? Ha ha ha! Alright, don't pass out. Mr. Naruhodo. Perhaps now would be a good time to introduce ourselves while the gentleman catches his breath. Good idea. Ha ha ha! Mr. McGilded, the thing is, we're actually here in London to study British law. We're law students on a study tour from Japan, you see. Ha ha ha! So, if you don't have a lawyer for the trial yet, and you'd be happy to put yourself in our hands, we'll do our best. What was I after saying, you daft Egypt? I've given you 1,000 guineas to stand up there next to me, haven't I? Well, yes, but I wasn't really offering to just stand up there next to you. Oh, I think I see what's going on here. Sorry. I know what you're thinking. This chancer of a fella claims to have more money than the Queen. But if that's true, why the blazes can't he hire the finest lawyer in all of England? Because he did it, that's the only explanation. Well... well... I mean, I kind of want to say exactly. Just in case this matters, I'll save. Yes, exactly. What now? Well, like you said, if you have all that money but you don't have anyone to represent you in court, there's no other logical conclusion than you're guilty of the charges. Well, you call a spade in the East, or so you do. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean any offense. I still can't express myself very well in English, you see. I'm never sure what's acceptable to say and what isn't, so... That's so, because you sounded fluent enough when you were telling me what a blackguard I must be. I'm terribly sorry. I almost want to go back and pick the other one. Let's go pick the other one. I don't like this. I don't like being told off. Even by, like, a fake video game, man. Not at all. Not at all, although it is a little strange, to be honest. Why you don't have a lawyer, I mean. That would be the fault of the Reaper. Sorry, did he just say Reaper? Aye, the Grim Reaper of the Bailey, Lord Barrack von Zeeks. He's the prosecutor. The prosecutor is the Grim Reaper? When Van Zeeks stands for the prosecution, they call the accused his sacrificial lambs. And to this day, in every single trial in which he's been the prosecutor, the accused has been damned. What? So it's reached the desperate situation, where there's no one willing to stand in defense against the fella at all. You could say he's a living legend of the Old Bailey. Goodness, Lord Barrack von Zeeks. He must be an exceptionally talented prosecutor then. Talented isn't the word you're looking for, madame. It's cursed. Cursed? What on earth? The defendant is summoned and his counsel. Please make your way into the courtroom. The trial is about to begin. His counsel? That would be me. Oh, 'tis time. Well then, fella, don't let me down. But I don't know anything about the case. You haven't told me what happened. Until you showed your face here, it made up me mind, so I had. Sorry. I decided I'd have to defend myself in there. How would that have worked? But then you made an appearance, a student of law, wouldn't you know? 'Tis no accident, I can assure you of that. 'Tis fate. So don't get cold feet now, please. I literally know nothing about the case or about this man who stands accused. In fact, the only thing I do know is that I can't just turn my back on him. Ooh-wee. Mr. Naruhodo. The man has no one. He'll have to stand alone in that courtroom, armed with nothing to defend himself. Yes, something that Kazuma would never have allowed to happen. Counsel, for the defense, what are you doing? If you're late for the start of the trial, you will lose your right to stand. I'll be right there. It's happening then. My first trial in a British court. I hope you're watching over me, Kazuma, because I have no idea how I'm going to manage this. That's fair. We're in the Old Bailey courtroom. So this is the highest court in Great Britain, the Old Bailey. Centuries of history in this place is palpable, isn't it? It's so different to the Supreme Court in Japan. It feels both imposing and serene at the same time. The atmosphere almost makes words redundant. Whatever the country, determining a person's guilt or innocence is always a solemn affair. May I say something, Mr. Naruhodo? Oh yes, what? Your eyes look ready to pop out of your head again. I know, but I just can't help it. So the prosecutor looks like a vampire. In the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I hereby declare this court will be in session. We are here today to determine the guilt or innocence of Mr. Magnus McGilded. Now call upon the counsels for the prosecution and the defense to declare their willingness to proceed. The prosecution is fully prepared. That must be the Reaper of the Bailey. He really does look fully prepared to dispatch his next poor victim to the underworld. Counsel for the defense, you appear to be Eastern. Do you speak English? Oh, yes, of course. Sorry. I asked if the defense was ready. I couldn't be further from ready if I tried. Those eyes please me. Nipponese. They shroud your fear, your doubt, your trepidation. They run wild, clinging to some phantom notion of courage. The quintessential look of a sacrificial lamb. A cold shiver just ran down my spine all the way to the tips of my toes. Now, Mr. McGilded. Yes, my lord. You stand accused of murder, a capital offense. Could be sent to the gallows if found guilty. Are you quite sure you wish to entrust your defense to this foreigner? As I've always said, my lord, 'tis a grand thing to give opportunities to the young. Even if the fella is a student from some little island off in the Far East, is it not the British way to ignore the dangers of yourself and give those less fortunate a fair chance? That is very much not the British way, going by history, but I'd like to think that the acts of chivalry do the great British Empire proud. Listen to Mr. McGilded, what a fine gentleman London has in him. To hear that he donated £5,000 to the government. Mother, please, may we go play in the Gilded Park. It sounds as though everyone in the public gallery is firmly behind Mr. McGilded. That's definitely welcome news, and he certainly has a way with words. I'm surprised he couldn't convince anyone to defend him. Eloquently put, Mr. McGilded, and most laudable sentiments. Now, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I'm sure I need hardly remind you that you 6 members of the public have been selected for your impartiality. Are you ready to proceed? Yes, my lord, if the task is to send rotters to the gallows where they belong, I'm more than ready. That does not sound like an impartial juror. That sounds like someone ready to kill. At the manor, his lordship always says we should dispose of rubbish promptly. Naturally, I agree. Ha, any criminals here will soon be wishing they never set eyes on me. Drinking on the jury? That feels like a thing that shouldn't be a thing. I feel a chill. Oh, don't mind me, my dears. I'll just be getting on with my knitting. Must finish these mitts for my grandson. Ah, Mr. Naruhodo, those people are the jury, yes. That's something we don't have in Japan yet. That's right, I've only ever read about it. Here in Great Britain, the court's final verdict depends on the opinions of these 6 jurors. The judge passes sentence according to the law, but the jurors determine guilt based on common sense. So the defendant is ultimately judged from 2 completely different points of view. But how exactly do the jurors give their verdict? That I don't know, but I'm sure it will become clear as the trial progresses. That seems like something we should have studied up on in the 40 days. Prosecutor Van Zeeks, my lord. It's been a number of years since we've seen you here in the courtroom. I thought you'd renounced your fame. I'm known as the Reaper of the Bailey, my lord. Infamy rather than fame, I would say. But yes, 5 years have passed since I last spread my wings in this capacity. So what brings you back? Is there some change of circumstance of which the court should be aware? I leave that to your imagination, my lord. The Reaper has been out of action for 5 years? Why did he have to choose today of all days to make a comeback? Don't lose heart, Mr. Naruhodo. As you wish, sir. The court nevertheless welcomes your return. Now then, opening statements, I think, a summary of the case, if you please. Certainly, my lord. As your lordship is aware, this is a case of overwhelming simplicity. Must be the only ones in here who aren't aware. The incident took place in the late evening, 3 days past. The hour was some minutes after 10. The victim was a maker of building bricks known in the community as Thrice-Fired Mason. Sorry, Thrice? He was a very accomplished craftsman. The bricks he fired were said to be almost indestructible. The victim's corpse was discovered in an omnibus in service on the streets of London at the time. A dagger that had been thrust into the victim's abdomen is believed to be the ultimate cause of death. Here's the autopsy report from the investigating medical officer at Scotland Yard. Thank you, counsel. I shall accept that and the photograph as evidence. And one further item of evidence. The prosecution wishes to submit these as well. And these are... Good lord, is that blood, counsel? Yes, my lord, seized by a policeman who arrived at the scene. These gore-soaked gloves were taken from the hands of the accused when he was arrested. What? Mr. McGilded's gloves had blood on them. Yes, I will accept these as evidence as well. How did I get into this? Let's take a moment and check the evidence. Oh, this is Kazuma's armband. So, name is Thrice Fired Mason, 54, Brickmaker, time and cause of death, 15th of February between 10 and 11 p.m. Stabbed once in the abdomen with a knife whilst journeying in an omnibus. Died due to internal hemorrhaging resulting from the trauma. His jacket is missing a button. This is definitely blood, isn't it? Not the most pleasant sight to be confronted with on our first day in London. Well, nothing will come of grumbling now. No, by the way, is Mr. McGilded right-handed? Yes, I believe so. He was toying with a coin in his right hand a little earlier. Ah, pity, if only he'd been left-handed. I think blood on either glove would be fairly incriminating, really. Okay, so there's nothing really to see with these gloves. Backed into a corner before I've even started. Continuing. According to the driver of the omnibus, there were only 2 passengers traveling inside his vehicle at the time. Only 2? Obviously one of those passengers was the deceased brickmaker, Mr. Mason. The other was the accused, Magnus McGilded. Well, rather damning circumstances, to say the least. Defendant, what say you? Well, of course, I have no recollection of such a thing. Mr. McGilded, to be sure, I rode the omnibus that evening, but whenever I'm in a carriage, I am taken with a fierce tiredness and I always succumb to it. Are you claiming to have been asleep? 'Tis the motion of the carriage, my lord. Lilton, so it is, and when I opened my eyes again, 'twas a desperate sight before me, the body of the man I'd never laid eyes on before in my life. Now I ask yous, what good-hearted soul wouldn't rush to help a fellow bleeding from his stomach? I wasn't about to start worrying about me gloves now, was I? I reached out to give the man a hand. So the blood got onto the gloves then after the man had been killed. Fortunately, that statement of the driver's was only the beginning. What? That's not all of it. There were multiple witnesses to the precise moment at which the brickmaker was fatally stabbed. Order, order, order. When the killing took place, only the victim and the accused were inside the carriage. There were witnesses to the crime. It's not just a case of compelling evidence. It's the nail in the coffin for the accused. Thank you, counsel. The circumstances of the crime have been made quite clear. I think we will hear testimony from these witnesses first of all. Your wish is my command. Bailiff, bring the witnesses in at once. We're just going to bring them all in? Witnesses, your names and occupations. My name is... well, everyone calls me Beppo. I drive an omnibus in the East End. Bruce Fairplay, I'm a banker in this city. My name's first lady first. I make hats for gents. Lady first. Let's begin by confirming the facts. 3 days ago, at a short time after 10 o'clock in the evening, all of you present in the stand were in an omnibus and witnessed the aforementioned incident. Is that correct? Yes, sir. Wait, but didn't we hear earlier that the bus driver was only transporting 2 people, the deceased and the accused? Very well then, let's proceed to your formal testimonies, please. You will tell the court precisely what you saw. It was the last bus of the evening, so I had few customers. I remember it well. The victim and the man accused of killing him were sat next to each other inside the bus, and out of the blue, the accused just reached over and plunged a knife right into his guts. That's right, he stabbed him. I screamed, I did. Couldn't help it. As soon as I heard the scream, I stopped my bus, and then I saw it too. Unambiguous testimony, I must say. Exactly, my lord. These men witnessed the incident in the omnibus with their own eyes. I'd like to ask a question, if I may. Yes, counsel? Well, this testimony makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. Why not? Well, the incident took place inside a moving carriage, didn't it? It was clearly stated from the outset, yes. Well, in that case, how could those 2 witnesses possibly have seen what happened? There's no way they could have seen the inside of the moving carriage. How quaint. I'd read that civilization in the Eastern Island nations was a good century behind our own, but you're here in London yourself. Are you really so ignorant about our omnibuses? Huh? Tell me, my unique Londonese friend, have you ever even traveled in an omnibus? Well, no. We only arrived in London this morning. No matter. I've arranged for us all to see one for ourselves, the actual scene of the crime, that is. What do you mean? The actual scene? How? A carriage is designed to be moved, after all. Presumably you understand that much. Yes. The omnibus in which this bloody crime took place is here today in this very building. Here? What? The entire carriage? Bailiff? Bring forth the stricken omnibus. So that's an omnibus, the omnibus. I can't believe they can bring something so enormous in here. Great Britain's courtrooms are amazing. As you can see, the omnibus is pulled by 2 horses and can carry up to 8 passengers. 4 passengers seated inside the enclosed cabin and another 4 on the rooftop deck above. Every Londoner knows the best view of the city's architecture and sights are to be had from the top of an omnibus. And I should point out to our foreign guests that there is a skylight in the roof, allowing a view of the interior from the seats above. Ah, a skylight. Oh. The penny drops at last, I see. These 2 gentlemen were occupying the rooftop seats on this omnibus when the murder took place. That's how they came to witness the grim incident through the skylight. That makes perfect sense. Well, counsel, this is a first. On my years behind the bench, I've never experienced the crime scene itself being brought into the courtroom. There are a number of important clues remaining inside the carriage, my lord. I would like to submit the omnibus itself as evidence. That is the prosecution's wish. Very well, I see no reason why not. This omnibus is hereby formally accepted as evidence. Can't believe it, the entire crime scene entered as evidence. Yes, Great Britain is simply extraordinary. I can help myself a lot by giving that omnibus a thorough examination, seeing as it's here. Let's do that. Well, let's open the door and go inside, shall we? The scene of the murder, it's horrible. That's blood that's soaked into the seat, the victim's obviously. Yes, and that seat would be clearly visible from the roof deck. Really stabbed somebody in full view of the other passengers like that, I wonder. Well, it was after dark, and there was a lamp on in here, so perhaps the culprit couldn't see anything outside through the skylight. Whichever way you look at it, it doesn't seem like it was a planned attack. It's a poster for the Great Exhibition. It's due to start 6 months from now. There's a lot of focus being drawn to the Crystal Tower, the centerpiece of the whole exposition. Oh, the Crystal Tower. It's under construction already, I believe. People all over London must be fizzing with excitement at the prospect of such a grand event. The seat has a handle, it seems. This looks like all sorts of equipment that might be needed to keep the omnibus running. Feeding tubs, tools to repair the wheels, blankets, horseshoeing tools. So it's a storage compartment for the coachman to keep his things, it seems. There doesn't seem to be any space for passengers to stow their luggage, that's for sure. Well, I don't imagine it would be very convenient for that purpose anyway. Is this the same? Yeah, this is the same. Okay, that's the same. Okay, this seat does not have a handle on it. It's quite a large skylight, isn't it? Yes, quite large. Quite large enough to afford a good view into the cabin from the roof deck. And there doesn't appear to be a handle or catch of any description, so I suppose it can't be opened from the inside of the cabin at least. Have you seen enough? Let's step back outside then. So this is the roof deck of the omnibus. Oh, you must have a wonderful view of London streets from up here. I can't imagine how cold it must feel. That just made me think of something horrible. Can you imagine being dragged around the city in the freezing cold as a punishment? Perhaps that is the real price you pay to stay out late. You can certainly see inside the carriage through that opening. There's a lamp in the enclosed cabin, so I'm sure the witnesses would have been able to see quite clearly. That's not good for us. Is there a way to, like... Okay, so that's just, like... for seeing the roof deck. Is there a way to, like, zoom in on a part? Because there's a latch on that, so it looks like we can open it, but maybe we don't have to investigate that to know that. Okay, so there's like no new evidence we're gonna get out of this, it looks like, but it is good that we looked at it. Let's continue with the proceedings then, your cross-examination counsel. Pray don't expect this Nipponese stray to understand the intricacies of a British court's cross-examination rights. Alright, my first cross-examination in a British court. Focus, Rinosuke. Focus. It was the last bus of the evening, so I had few customers. I remember it well. The victim and the man accused of killing him were sat next to each other inside the bus. Then, out of the blue, the accused just reached over and plunged a knife right into his gut. You actually saw the exact moment that it happened. Didn't I already testify to that? Or are the fair dinkum, hard-working city bankers not considered trustworthy these days? Oh, no, I didn't mean that. This is no good, I really got his back up. Perhaps you could just tell us what you saw in a little more detail, if that's... My lord. Juror number 3, what's the meaning of this? My mind is made up, my lord, completely and utterly made up. Made up about what? I don't like the stinking rich, never have. They're always up to something or other that they shouldn't be, every one of them. And that little leprechaun of a man is no exception. Well, he can't fool me. There's no point wasting time listening to any more of this. That's my opinion on the matter anyway. That is precisely what I was about to say. As the foreman of the jury, it's my duty to set a good example for my fellow jurors. What is happening here? Let me see. Ah, yes, it seems that's how the members of the jury give their verdicts. With fire? Apparently, yes. White for innocent and black for guilty. Oops, didn't mean to open that. As the 6 members of the jury make up their minds about the case, one by one they each cast a ball of fire into the great scales of justice, as we saw a moment ago. If those enormous scales fall completely to the black side, does that mean... Let's do our very best to make sure that doesn't happen. I'm even more worried than I was before. Very well, the court acknowledges this change in the jury's stance. That's for the defense. Please continue with your cross-examination. Ah, this is a nightmare.
Hold it!
You stabbed him, you say you were sitting up on the roof deck, were you? That's right, sir. I was up on the roof seats. I remember seeing the little gent sitting next to the fellow that was stabbed. I've been thinking about a new hat design, you see, so I was just gazing absent-mindedly around. But then I happened to look down through the skylight. It was sickening. It was sticking right out from his belly, that huge great knife. A grim sight indeed. That didn't help me at all. Sure looked like they were even more convinced my client did it than they were before. I think we had some evidence to counter their suspicions. Mr. First. Oh, yes. Yes, sir? Is this the knife you saw? Oh, good grief. Yes, that's it. The very one, sir. Is that... Yes, counsel, this is the blade that was driven into the victim's belly like a stake through the heart. This is a blade of considerable size, counsel. It is, and furthermore, the scabbard is emblazoned prominently with a certain initial, the letter M, which might seem oddly familiar. M for Magnus, perhaps, or Gilded, possibly. Take your pick. It seems this particular big name in London made a magnificent mistake. But there are M's everywhere, like yes, like in Mason. This blade is far too extravagant for a poor brickmaker to have owned. No, this weapon of murder almost certainly belongs to the accused. Not conclusive, but certainly compelling counsel. My lord, if you'll forgive the interruption, juror number 2, go on. Mr. McGilded is a pillar of society and a gentleman's word should be sacrosanct. However, those of us in service know we must accept hard truths. Okay, what are you about to do? Dispose of the rubbish. Okay, so we gotta convince 3 jurors. I don't wish to cause offense, but I do like to eradicate all traces of filth and grime. I have painstakingly typed every word uttered here today and cross-referenced all the facts. As such, I am now in a position to draw the only logical conclusion. Not again. That's 4 out of 6 jury members who have proposed the guilty verdict. There are only 2 left. We've had it. Every time I press these witnesses for more information, I just make the situation worse. Nevertheless, what we need more than anything in the moment is more information. We're still very much in the dark. So we'll just have to keep pressing the witnesses, knowing that more sparks may well fly. We mustn't give up hope that we'll uncover something that will give us a way to fight back. But, alright, I'll keep trying. I can't give up. I just need to keep calm and listen to the witnesses' statements again. Let's examine the knife. Ornate letter M, undeniably Mr. Magnific's gilded initial. It's beautifully gilded too. It must be very valuable, I should think. Ah, what is it? Look at this M. If you turn it upside down, it becomes a W. This could change everything. W? This is one of those, you know, turnabout cases, I'm sure of it. I'm afraid I don't know it all, but what I am sure of is that this is an M. Oh. My idea was quickly quashed. I mean, do we know that? That part is the sheath, isn't it? Are you alright, Mr. Naruhodo? Oh, sorry, yes, I just don't really like blades. Those don't seem like the words of a man with a large katana slung from his waist. It's not a blade, that's Kazuma's soul. Anyway, there's no sense in delaying it. Let's see what the blade looks like. That looks like a lot of blood. Or it looks a lot like blood. Excuse me. Surely is blood the victim's. An Englishman's blood looks a lot like a Japanese man's blood. Did you think it wouldn't? Sorry, it's just that we've only just arrived here in Great Britain, finding it a little hard to adjust. Yes, I do understand. Anything else notable about the blade? It looks like not really. Yeah. Okay, I thought I would be smart and like look down the I guess barrel of the blade, but alright, so when it happened, the only 2 people in the enclosed cabin area were the victim and the defendant, and so help me, 3 whole people witnessed the man I'm trying to defend do the deed. I don't like to be pessimistic, but we do seem to be in a rather difficult situation here. What am I supposed to think here? Is Mr. McGilded really innocent, or could it be Before we jump to conclusion, our first task should be to gather information. We need to understand the case better. Okay, let's just keep pressing, I think.
Hold it!
And you saw them through the skylight in the roof of the carriage. That's right, when you sit up on the top deck, the window's right there at your feet. There was a lamp on inside, so I had a pretty good view. Two of them were wearing hats, and I couldn't exactly make out their faces. There's not a shred of doubt in my mind that it was Mr. McGilded. How can be so sure? Look, how could I put it politely? McGilded is a gentleman of rather small stature. I couldn't have mistaken him for anyone else. I forget that when the vehicle came to a halt, the only people inside the enclosed cabin were the deceased Mr. Mason and Mr. McGilded. There's no room for doubt here. I really wish there was. Can I try pressing on this again now that we have the knight?
Hold it!
What exactly did you see? Oh, well, sir, that would be the passenger, sir. Yes, collapsed on the floor he was. And by the passenger, obviously you are referring to Mr. Mason, the brickmaker. And then the other passenger had the knife in his hand, like this. And the other passenger, you are obviously referring to the accused, Mr. McGilded. And then he plunged down like this, stabbing the other passenger in the belly. What? But that doesn't work, because the autopsy said only one stab happened. It's hard to believe one of London's greatest philanthropists, but this is damning indeed. The law knows no philanthropists, my lord, only the innocent and the guilty. Good deeds mean nothing when overshadowed by evil. The truth is everything. Couldn't agree more, sir. The truth. Okay.
Hold it!
Yes, I think it was sometime after 10, wasn't it? Oh, yes, sir, that's right, sir. Yes, even ever so cold it was, sir. Freezing, in fact. And you had 4 passengers on board at the time, is that correct? Yes, that's right, sir. Not all traveling the same parts of the bus, of course, though, no. And there were no other passengers when the incident took place. No one alighted, for example. You're quite right with that, sir. No other passengers like that. Nope, none. So nobody fled the seat of the crowd then. Tough to say. The boss insists on it running. He does every evening, the last bus of the day. But I do wonder sometimes if it's altogether worthwhile. Yes, sorry to say. What do you mean by that? Oh, what with it being so cold and everything, and only making 20 pence on the run, you see. Yes, I spend that much at the pub on the way home just trying to warm up again. Just can't believe it, sir. Can't believe it. Murder on my own bus. It's too awful to think about. I haven't been able to shake this cold ever since it happened. My lord, I wish to speak. Yes, juror number 5, do I take it that you too? It's the master of the London Guild of Coachmen. The idea of a murder being committed in one of the city's carriages is utterly abhorrent to me. It wouldn't be right to make a decision before hearing all the facts, though, I said to myself. But I've heard enough now. The horse has bolted, as they say. No, please, just keep an open mind a little longer. Gee up now, Silver Blaze, the finish is in sight. Beppo is a long-standing member of the guild, and I trust what the man says. Oh, thank you, sir. You're too kind, sir. Oh, this is too unkind, sir. Which now means that 5 jurors agree to condemn this man. Madam Juror number 6. Yes, dear, what can I do for you? You have heard the testimonies of these witnesses in the stand. Oh yes, I certainly have. Still got my hearing, you know. Then pray tell, why are you yet to pronounce your meaning? Well, dear, the thing is, I'm a creature of habit, me. I always go to the park around this time of day and sit on a nice bench and get on with my knitting. There's a lovely little park just near where I live. The Gilded Park, it's called. The gentleman donated it to the city, you know, to put a smile on Londoner's face, he said. Can't imagine such a fine young gentleman would have it in him to take another man's life. Always doing wonderful things for the city, that's right, a man like that wouldn't stab someone, surely. Mother, may we go to the McGilded Public Library later and borrow some more books? How many Londoners live with their heads in the clouds? You people not know? What kind of a man Magnus McGilded really is? What kind of a man is he? The philanthropist Magnus McGilded has enough wealth to purchase the entire city he claims to value so highly. But where did all that wealth come from? Your client is a Shylock, sir, and one with the very darkest of souls. What? Stone the crows! McGilded lends money at extortionate rates of interest, so his victims have no hope of repaying him. When they default, he takes possession of everything they own. He's a vulture that preys on the weak. I've never heard any mention of that before. Your faculties haven't deserted you, I assure you, ma'am. So has this thought not crossed your mind? Would a man wealthy enough to buy London in its entirety not have a carriage of his own? What possible reason could this man have had to make use of a public omnibus service? You're not saying that. The victim, a poor brickmaker, had next to nothing to his name save considerable financial liability. It will come as no surprise that his creditor was the accused Magnus McGilded. But let it also be known that the very day Mr. Mason was killed was the final repayment date for his debts. Good gracious. The brickmaker was destitute, he had lost his house, he had not a shilling with which to repay his debts. And in the end, this pitiful soul had the very last thing he owned taken from him in his life. By the merciless philanthropist pretender Magnus McGilded. I don't believe it. I might add something briefly, Miss Susato. Saying that the victim had been lent money by Mr. McGilded, but where is the evidence to support your claim? What is a man? Pray forgive the discourtesy of filling my hallowed chalice in a court of law. Aha, there it is. Lord Van Zeek's hallowed chalice. How can this be considered acceptable? I find myself in unexpectedly good humor. I had heard ladies from the Far East could show great courage, but I didn't expect to experience it myself. Ah, as a judicial assistant to the defense, I am simply doing my job. What a pity that your display of courage is in vain. This is the debtor's ledger, which details all monies loaned by the accused. You will find the victim's name clearly recorded inside. Oh. Allow me to present this ledger as evidence. And pray forgive the discourtesy of raising my chalice in a toast to the enigmatic East at the same time. Marvelous toast, Council. I will gladly accept this new evidence. The victim who owed 20 guineas. Ah yes, 20 guineas. The victim owed a considerable sum. And the accused made quite certain he had ample recompense. Well, it would seem I've had the wool pulled over my eyes. Regrettably, madame, this is the modus operandi of the accused. And it's such a pretty little park, too. What a scoundrel. Still, maybe it's all for the best. Wait a minute, let's think about this a little more before. I don't stand for nonsense. That was it, the last juror's decision. According to this Encyclopedia of British Law, when all members of the jury have concluded the defendant is guilty, court proceedings are suspended and the presiding judge will deliver the final verdict and sentence. That's what it says here. The final verdict. It's over then. Oh. There's a footnote, though. However, the defense, the 6 members of the jury are now in agreement in this case. I want to convey my respect for your swift and righteous decision. Let's check out this ledger before we get too deep into things in case we actually need something in here. This portfolio must contain all sorts of secrets of London's gentry. Dear, do you really think we ought to look inside? It's not as though we know any of London's gentry personally, is it? Apart from our great detective friend, perhaps. Actually, I wonder... I assure you we will not find Mr. Sholmes' name inside. Let's see what we find. Okay. Gosh, it's crammed full of gentlemen's names, isn't it? Well, I suppose they're probably not all gentlemen at all, are they? After all, not everyone in this country is well off. Ah, goodness, what is it? Look at this, do you see this name here? Bruce Fairplay. Should that mean something to me? It does sound strangely familiar, actually. Bruce Fairplay, the witness testifying at this very moment. Oh yes, of course, the banker. Why is his name in here? He borrowed 20 guineas, didn't he? And look, the repayment date is fast approaching. It's possible that this is just a coincidence, of course, but this could be very useful information. Okay. No other information. That's the thing we probably needed it for. According to the laws of this country, I will now conclude the trial, delivering my final verdict. Trust there are no objections. Is Susato, just tell me one thing. Yes, you were in the middle of saying something before. Footnote in your Encyclopedia of British Law, however, the defense. What did it say next? Oh yes, of course. One moment. When all members of the jury have concluded that the defendant is guilty, the proceedings are suspended and the presiding judge will deliver the final verdict and sentence. And the footnote says, however, the defense has the right to demand a summation examination of the jurors at this point. A summation examination?
Objection!
Summation examination. From which century has that tome you have there been resurrected? Judging from the binding, I would say that book is at least 50 years old. Any modern text on British law wouldn't even give such an antiquated procedure a mention. It's a relic, long forgotten, and certainly no longer practiced. So you're out of luck. Oh. What even is it, Miss Susato, this so-called summation examination? One moment and I'll read about it. You would demand the right to a procedure before you even understand what it entails. Typical Nipponese. Alright, Mr. Naruhodo, I think I understand. It seems that under this procedure we will be able to appeal to the members of the jury. To do what exactly? Appeal to them to change their leaning and reverse their decision, and it says here that if successful, the proceedings of the trial must be resumed. Make them reverse their decisions? Yes, in times gone by, barristers would use a summation examination to attempt to influence the jury's decision, but that procedure became something of a formality with no practical benefit really, so it rather fell out of use. I wonder why. Because it was devoid of purpose. Changing just one member of the jury's mind would be hard enough, let alone several. No self-respecting defense barrister would even assert his right to try in this day and age. Still, I don't see any mention of the procedure actually being formally revoked. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that although it may be antiquated and largely forgotten, it isn't yet extinct. What do you think, Mr. Naruhodo? Yeah, we assert our right to do it. The defense wishes to assert its right to a summation examination, my lord. London is the capital city of the most powerful nation on earth. We have a duty to the world to exemplify the very highest standard of judicial procedure. Summation examinations are an embarrassment that should remain buried. But if it's our right, it's our right. I believe it could prove vital in this trial. The defense's position is perfectly valid. The court will proceed with the summation examination. This is madness. Foreman, are you and the remainder of the jury ready? Eh? Well, I'm not, there was no mention of this in the letter I received, you see, so... All members of the jury will be asked to explain on what grounds they have reached their decision. On what grounds? You must all justify your decisions and explain why you believed the defendant to be guilty. Oh, my lord, you're rather putting us on the spot. This is most irregular, no mention of this was made before. I don't really hold with all this justifying lark. That seems to have thrown the jurors off. Seems none of them have experienced this before. Alright then, the summation examination. The defense procedure no practicing lawyer has attempted for years, is it? Just maybe, might be the opportunity we've been looking for to turn this trial around. So be it then, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the court hereby calls upon you to state the grounds on which you find the defendant, Magnus McGilded, guilty of the most serious crime. The jurors' contentions. There was no one else inside the carriage at the time, so it has to have been him. I trust the driver, he has an excellent memory, it seems. 4 passengers with fares totaling 20 pence. He stuck the chap next to him just like this. Brazen, I must say, absolutely brazen. I have simply typed and collated all the statements made thus far and drawn the logical conclusion. You can trust the guild. Fair fares is our motto. We haven't raised the prices above 4 pence for years. The scoundrel stabbing that poor man on the floor, it beggars belief. Starting to wish I hadn't pushed for this now. Some of the jurors don't seem to have wonderfully formed arguments though, do they? Well, let's see what we can do. We need to get these 6 people to change their minds. Throw everything I can at them and use some very persuasive language. Just a moment, Mr. Naruhodo. According to my book, that's not quite how it works. Oh, thought I was going to have to thaw their icy minds with some heartwarming rhetoric about the defendant. Unfortunately, once the jurors have decided the defendant is guilty, they're unlikely to heed anything the defense says. But then, reach their conclusions by their own reasoning, you see. Your pleas will sound like excuses. In fact, it could recoil on you. The more you try to persuade them, the more entrenched they may become. What on earth am I supposed to do? Oh dear, I'm just citing what I've read about British law, Mr. Naruhodo. Right, sorry. Do you have any idea how to make this work then? Well, from what I can understand, the key to this procedure is using the jurors' own words to make your arguments. What do you mean? Well, the 6 members of the jury are randomly selected members of the public. They may appear to present a united front, but the truth is, they're complete strangers who just happen to find themselves here in the courtroom together. And that's the way to break them down, you mean? Yes, exactly. We must listen very carefully to what each member of the jury says, and see if we can identify any contradictory statements. If we can then contrast the statements and pit the corresponding jurors against each other. I see, so it's contradictions in what 2 or more jurors say that we're looking for. Why then? It's similar to a regular cross-examination. Well, yes, I suppose you're right. And contradictions in their statements and pit the jurors against one another to break them down. Right, I may be able to pull this off. No, that's not right. I have to pull this off. When we start proceedings, counsel, I'm going to ask you to take the stand for this. I'm expecting a clear and concise rebuttal. Yes, my lord. So I'm kind of having trouble following this, but hopefully there will be like a gameplay mechanical tutorial to explain this. Defense's rebuttal. There was Nelson in the carriage at the time, so it had to have been him. Oh, juror number 2.
Objection!
Those 2 statements clearly contradict each other. You do explain yourself, counsel. Me? Oh dear, what have I said? I swear on Silverblaze's maiden name, I haven't the first idea what you're talking about. According to the group testimony we've heard so far, there were 4 passengers on the omnibus on the night in question. And according to the coachman, Mr. Beppo, he took 20 pence in fares. Right, I have those precise details typed neatly here in front of me. And juror number 5 also told us the following: the fares for the omnibus is always 4 pence. That it is, a fair and convenient single price, just the way London's carriages should operate. But that doesn't add up at all. In fact, it leaves a glaring discrepancy in the facts. Why, man, why? 4 passengers paying 4 pence each, if you do the multiplication, it would be 16 pence. Exactly. As I said, it doesn't add up, the figures are different. By 4 pence, in fact. Or precisely 1 person's fare. 1 person's fare? Yes, in other words, on the omnibus that night, it's distinctly possible there was another passenger we heard nothing about. This can't be right. The coachmen of the guild are good, honest men, one and all. Trustworthiness is our watchword. The figures your coachman claims most certainly do not add up. Your watchword, good sir, is a fallacy. I beg your pardon. Mr. Guildmaster, I think you ought to consider that if this trial were to end now, the news will surely spread all over London. The news that one of your coachmen tried to hide the fact that he lets nefarious characters ride his omnibus. Alright then, how do I make it so this miserable trial doesn't end, Well, according to my book here, you simply launch a ball of fire onto the innocent side of the set of scales. Now hold your horses there, coachman. We were all in agreement. Why did you have to wait till I get my hands on you, Beppo? This is all very irritating. Begging your pardon, sir, I'm going to do the same. For the love of Mike, not you as well. penny can be the difference between a smile and a tear, after all. I certainly can't put my trust in someone who doesn't follow my exacting standards in financial matters. Oh, really? I, for one, think it's only proper that we hear from the witnesses again. Well done, Mr. Naruhodo, you did it! We can manage to change 2 more jurors' minds and force the trial to continue. 2 more, actually. There is something else that's bothering me about a couple of their assertions. And that's where you must strike at next. So I need to pit 2 more jurors against each other and show there's another contradiction in their assertions. Now the scales of justice have shifted, but they still weigh heavy on the side of guilt. Counsel, you have the floor again. Continue with your summation examination. I'm changing my leaning to innocent. I should like to hear what the slipshod bookkeeper has to say for himself. Beppo, this trial has to continue so I can get to the bottom of this corruption. Not guilty, I say. So juror number 6 and juror number 3, they disagree on how he was stabbed. Those 2 statements are completely contradictory. What? Explain, counsel, post haste. Oh dearie me, I was only knitting a jumper for my other half. What is all this claptrap? What does contradictory even mean, I ask you? We've heard from more than one witness. They allegedly saw the actual moment when the defendant stabbed the victim. Now, out of curiosity, juror number 3... What, can't you see that I'm busy here? How would you say the defendant stabbed the victim? What sort of motion was it? Ah, want to test me, do you? It was like this, stuck the fellow next to him without even getting up, just like the prim banker said. Yes, that was Mr. Fairplay's testimony, quite true. Now then, juror number 6. Oh, is that me, is it? What can I do you for, young man? How would you say the defendant stabbed the victim, madam? Oh, well dear, as far as I understand it, it was like this. He stabbed the poor man after he'd collapsed on the floor. The coachman said so. Now don't move. Take a look at these 2 jurors. He stuck the fellow next to him without even getting up, and he stabbed the poor man after he'd collapsed on the floor. Well, I never. They're stabbing in totally different directions. What? Bless my stitches, what a muddle. What this tells us is that there's a strong possibility one of the witnesses isn't telling the truth. Oh. Well, why? Why the dickens would they lie? I don't know that yet, but what I do know is that if the trial ends at this point, we may never find out. We may never know the real truth. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, can you really let that happen in all good conscience? Lies, you say? Oh, dearie me. I can't abide people telling lies. The scales. I don't believe it. Wait! Now hear this, my fellow jurors. I warn you, you cannot listen to this man. Look at him in his black suit. He's clearly some devious Eastern sorcerer using magic on us all. If he'd use magic, do you really think I'd be putting myself through all this? Answer me this, dark jinx. Huh? Me? What exactly is the problem? What of it if 2 witnesses have slightly different recollections of events? What of it? Let's say the Shylock did stab the victim as he was sat next to him on the omnibus, and the young daddy saw him do it. Now let's say the victim collapsed on the floor, and the Shylock stabbed him again, and the old lady saw him do it. Well, what's to say it didn't happen like that, Who are you calling a dandy, sir? Why I should take this knife to you? Who are you calling old? Why I should take this needle to you? They're ready to kill each other now. Of course, the foreman of the jury... Could the foreman of the jury be right? Did the 2 witnesses see different moments of the same crime? It's out of the question. Unfortunately, Mr. Foreman. What is it, you dark jinx? Come on, out with it. What you're suggesting is impossible. It's out of the question. What are you talking about, man? How can you possibly say that? You do realize that I'm only doing my job. As foreman of the jury, I have a responsibility to steer everyone in the right direction. So where's your evidence, man? That's what we want to see. I say the two witnesses saw two different moments of the same crime. If you say that's out of the question, show me some proof. Looks like the only way I'm going to convince him is to present him with something he can't dismiss. Irrefutable hard evidence. As you wish. What? I'll give you the proof. It's out of the question that the two witnesses saw two different moments of the same crime, as proven by... Let me double check to make sure this says this. Stabbed once in the abdomen with a knife.
Take that!
This is the victim's autopsy report. According to what's written here, Mr. Mason was stabbed in the abdomen only once. And only once? It's quite simple. The victim was stabbed precisely one time. Which means these witnesses can't possibly have seen it happen two different times. Alright, I concede defeat. Wait, that means 4 jurors are now leaning to not guilty. We've done it, Mr. Naruhodo. We've won! What are you playing at, you dandy fool? Shut your trap, sir. No one deceives me. But we had a consensus. I said, shut your trap. I know a liar when I see one. And if the chap ever dares to cross the threshold of my shop, I'll take this razor-sharp blade and shave every last hair off his head. That's creepy. Please tell me he's a barber. Well, in a quite remarkable turn of events, the defense's summation examination has flipped the balance of the scales of justice. The jurors now stand at 2 for guilty and 4 for not guilty. Accordingly, there is no longer a large enough majority among the jurors for me to adjudicate, and the trial must continue. I hereby ask the defense, prosecution, and witnesses to return to their places. I call upon all of you to continue to pursue the truth. So, Lord Van Zeeks, continue to substantiate the case for the prosecution if you please. Dude already finished a glass of wine in that, like, probably 10-15 minute conversation? What is a man? A miserable pile of secrets. He should have thrown it. Having savored the rich aroma of the carmine contents of this hallowed chalice, it may seem crass to crush it to dust. Pray forgive the discourtesy. Lord Van Zeeks! Is it cold in here, or is it just me? As your antiquated tome no doubt says, the prosecution may not speak during a summation examination, so I honored a deathly silence and listened to the charade. It seems I overestimated the intelligence of the jury. Well, no matter. There's nothing so hard to prove as a self-evident truth, it would seem. No, and why else would we grace the courtroom with our presence after all? So, let us proceed to the next round of battle. Bring forth the witnesses once more. Witnesses, I trust you heard the summation examination we had just had to endure. Oh yes, sir, that I did, sir. Of course I heard it. Oh yes, sir, I heard it. You, sir, on the end, the coachman, I believe it's Beppo? Yes, sir, my lord, sir. It transpires that in your previous testimony, you were attempting to veil the presence of the 5th passenger on your omnibus. You'll be found guilty of perjury. You're advised to bear that in mind, sir. Oh mio dio, Now then, witnesses, I hereby call on you to testify before the court again. You will explain the various misgivings brought to our attention by the defense's summation examination. Various misgivings. I only carried 4 passengers that night, I swear it, but, well, I, for one, was told I had to pay 5 pence for the bus. He fiddled us on the fare, he did, and then I saw that blood-curdling sight as well. It's all too much. I tell you, I saw Mr. McGilded stabbing that man. Everything I said before stands. Oh yes, yes, he stabbed him. Yes, he did. I think so, yes. Counsel, make sense of this for me, please. The phantom 5th passenger conjured into existence by my learned Eastern friend never existed. The confusion has arisen from the coachman's sly little cozenage. Beppo, explain yourself. I'm terribly sorry, Guildmaster. The guild's fare is 4 pence across the board, you know that. Am I to understand that you've been overcharging our passengers by a penny a fare? It's so cold, and the last run of the day is always half empty. You've been dishonest, coachman. I'm sorry. You're a disgrace, Beppo, a disgrace. Your selfish actions have brought dishonor on the entire guild. I may, sir. I had to pay 10 pence on the bus just last week. What? 4 passengers at 5 pence each is yes, 20 pence. I've done the arithmetic 10 times already, but I just can't make the result come out differently. No, that figures. Well, it would appear that one of the aforementioned misgivings has already been explained. Counsel for the defense, your cross-examination, if you please. You've already had the pleasure of a protracted summation examination today, so you intend to continue the parlor games. Absolutely. So we already know there wasn't a 5th person. At least if everything we're being told is true, which...
Hold it!
There was only 4 passengers on your carriage, but you didn't charge them the standard 4 pence fare. Is that right? It's impossible to make the last run of the day pay. I was so cold. It was all I could do to stop myself passing out. I'm getting chilblains just listening to you. It was terrible, so I wanted to give myself a pat on the back for even keeping the bus running. Doesn't a dedicated coachman deserve an extra penny per passenger? You're digging a deeper hole for yourself here. Only there had been a 5th passenger on the omnibus that night. We would have had another suspect. Well, I, for one, was told I had to pay 5 pence for the bus.
Hold it!
Does that mean everyone on board that night paid 5 pence instead of 4? Well, I paid 5 pence too, sir. And I just told you that I did. Flat fare of 5 pence across the board. It's not something to be proud of. So-called discrepancy my learned friend identified was nothing of the sort. Much like the phantom killer you so desperately needed, it's gone, dead, and buried. I would have been happy if it had never existed in the first place. He billed us on the fare he did, and then I saw that blood-curdling sight as well. It's all too much. This blood-curdling sight. You mean the murder, I presume? Yes, sir. A loathsome sight, no one should have to witness that. The horror in the eyes of a man in the moment his life is taken. Oh, well, not exactly, sir. Hey. I mean, I didn't actually see the exact moment the gent was stabbed. Good gracious, really? We have another witness who did, however. Banker has already testified to it. But Mr. First didn't actually see the point at which the victim was killed. It turned out to be very significant. I heard the banker gent next to me take a sharp intake of breath. See, that's when I looked through the glass. That's when I saw that horrible blade poking out from his belly, all covered in blood. Every time I see a knife now, I can't help screaming, even when I'm eating. Tell you, I saw Mr. McGilded stabbing that man. Everything I said before stands. So you saw the defendant, Mr. McGilded, stabbing the victim, Mr. Mason, who was sitting next to him. That's what I said, isn't it? Bothering me before this was. Just a brief moment, he hesitated before answering the question. Anyway, there was only the two of them inside the carriage, wasn't there? There's been much talk of a fifth passenger, but as yet zero evidence. What are we wasting all this time for, eh? It's black and white. The man's guilty. Something about Mr. Ripley's testimony just jars with me. I wish I could work out what it was. There's probably a bit of evidence we need. Earlier you testified that you saw the moment when the defendant allegedly stabbed the victim, didn't you? Oh yes, that's right. You said that the victim was on the floor and described the assailant holding the knife in an ice pick grip. I suppose I might have, yes. Put the cart before the horse, maybe? It's this. I'm quite sure about most of it. I was driving the horses when I heard a scream from the seats on the roof deck. I expect that was me, sir. And when I turned around, yes, I saw it through the skylight. The gentleman was on the floor and the knife was sticking up out of his midriff. That's right. And the fellow holding the handle was the famous man. Yes. So in short, you didn't see the moment when the victim was actually stabbed at all. I really thought that I did, but when I go over it again in my head, no, I suppose I didn't actually see the precise moment of the stabbing, did I?
Excuse me.
Do you have something to say about that, Mr. Fairplay? Now you listen to me. I know what you're thinking. Didn't really see the exact moment the fellow was stabbed. What are the chances of that? Eh? Are you asking me or telling me? Maybe you'll extract some new information from him if I answer him cleverly. Could he have just happened to see the exact moment the crime was committed? Well, it is a little hard to believe, certainly. Unless you spend your time peeping through a skylight on top of an omnibus, that is. Peeping? I'm a respectable city banker, I'll have you know. And I know what I saw. I remember it as clear as a Ballarat day. It's a grim scene, I don't mind telling you. Thank you, Mr. Fairplay. Oh, excuse me if I was getting a little hot under the collar there, everyone. I ask you to supplement your testimony with a clear statement about what exactly you saw. Oh, I can do that, all right. Tell you just how grim it was. You think I'd forget the sight of those blood-soaked hands after that butcher stabbed that man? Hands? He was wearing gloves! Blood-soaked hands? Well, I admit that soaked might be laying it on a little thick, but... Anyway, there was definitely blood all over them. Both of them were covered in it. Well, I'm very sorry to disagree, Mr. Fairplay, but that's more than a little peculiar. What? Here are the gloves worn by the defendant, Mr. McGilded, on the night in question. Oh yes, right. There certainly does appear to be a sizable dark-colored stain there, but, as I'm sure you can clearly see, it's only on the right-hand glove. Arg. In short, Mr. Fairplay, your testimony is inconsistent. Yeah. But, no, that can't be right. So you're the liar here, then. Gar. You were quite clear about it. You said, here, it was both hands. Grr. Mr. Fairplay, if your last statement was a lie, it calls your entire testimony into question. You say you saw the moment the victim was stabbed, but is that really the truth? Arg,
Objection!
It was a simple mistake. You can't justify accusing this man of lying. Yes, it wasn't both hands, it was only one, but the fact remains. The victim's blood was on the accused. No, Mr. Fairplay categorically stated that he saw blood all over both hands, which means there's a strong possibility that this witness was deliberately trying to mislead the court. Arrgh, why? I'm a city banker, for Pete's sake. My word should be the gold standard. I'm a gentleman, not some gutter snipe. Upstanding members of the society don't prevaricate. I'm learning some big words here. He's claiming to have no reason to lie. Is that really the case? Mr. Naruhodo, we had some evidence to explain why Mr. Fairplay might be lying. Turn the tide in this trial completely. Yeah, we have evidence. My lord. Yes, counsel. The defense is ready to present evidence. By Jove, are you sure? Yes, evidence that will clearly demonstrate why Mr. Fairplay had a reason to lie in his testimony. Gog! Very well. I hereby call on the defense to present its evidence. Evidence that demonstrates a motive for the witness's alleged deception of the court.
Take that!
This is a list of the debtors who owed money to Mr. McGilded. Yes, a list of innocent victims crippled by the accused extortion. The point is, among the names of these debtors is your name, Mr. Bruce Fairplay. What? Mr. Fairplay, are you currently indebted financially to the accused? No, well, it's barely worth being called a debt. According to this ledger, you owe 20 guineas. Not an inconsiderable sum of money, wouldn't you say? Ah, well, what of it? Let's suppose Mr. McGilded were to be found guilty of murder. What would become of your debt in that case? These documents state that the loan agreement is forged between two individual parties. Therefore, were the creditor, the defendant here, to be sentenced to a capital punishment, all outstanding debts which were owed to him would be annulled. They would cease to exist. Cease to exist? Mr. Fairplay, is it not the case that you claimed in your testimony to have seen something you never in fact saw in a devious attempt to annul your debt of 20 guineas to the defendant? Grrr! Order, order, order! Mr. Bruce Fairplay! Yes, my lord! Let me ask you again, and be aware that your answer may have most serious implications upon your future, sir. Did you or did you not see the precise moment in time in which the defendant is alleged to have thrust a knife into the victim? Your silence speaks volumes. You did not tell the truth in your testimony. Alright, now let's not make a melodrama out of this. Perhaps I did overstate the truth a pinch. A pinch? But it makes no difference. I definitely remember seeing blood on McGilded's hands, both of them. And yet, only one of the defendant's gloves, which we have here as evidence, is stained. So you keep saying... I wonder if I might be allowed to speak, sir. Go ahead, Mr. First. Well, the thing is, I think I remember seeing it myself as it happens. Seeing what? The blood, sir, on the assailant's hands. I think, yes. I'm almost sure that it was on both of his hands, not just one. What? What? It would appear that we're going to need further testimony from all you witnesses. This time, I would like to know precisely what you did and what you did not see. Do I make myself perfectly clear? Yars. Mr. Naruhodo, this is good news. The course of this trial seems to have shifted slightly at last. I might finally have a chance to turn things around here. There was blood on both hands of the assailant. I sincerely and distinctly remember that. However, I suppose you might say that I didn't see the exact moment of the stabbing transpired, if that matters. I remember seeing the knife, and I remember seeing both of the attacker's hands with blood on them. I didn't actually see anything myself, no, not until I heard that scream. Anyway, the fact remains there can't have been anyone else inside the carriage, or we would have all seen. And lo and behold, in truth of fact, one of you was witness to the crucial moment the crime was perpetrated. I apologize, my lord, but honestly, there was no one else inside that carriage, and the man's hands were covered in blood. That much incriminating evidence is tantamount to saying we saw the man do it. That's really not what testimony is about. Let us examine the interior of the omnibus once more. The victim's fresh blood is clearly visible on the seat, corroborating the witnesses' accounts. In other words, there is no substantial nor significant change in the facts of the case. Very well. Your cross-examination, please, counsel. Whew. What the witness really saw. Let's check out the omnibus again. I do want to take a look at the floor. Okay, there's nothing on the floor. If I go look at the roof, would they point out like, oh, you can only see 2 seats from here? Well, what was that like last bit? Say that I didn't see the exact moment the stabbing happened, if that matters. I'll try to downplay this. Whether or not you saw the exact moment of the crime is a matter of fundamental importance, as well you know. Hard, but for crying out loud, we all know that no one else could possibly have done it. It was just, we were trying to save us all some time. You have a loan of 20 guineas outstanding with the defendant, do you not? Hope to release yourself from that financial burden by ensuring the defendant was found guilty? Well, it's not entirely not what I was hoping for. I just lost a little guinea 10 when I backed the wrong horse in the Derby, that's all. I was going to win it all back. There's a fixture this weekend that's a sure thing. A little guinea or 10. I'm a banker, no one bats an eye if I borrow a little spending money for the weekend. I think you may have revealed rather more about your character than you bargained for, sir. Witnesses' scruples are not on trial here. Proceed to the next witness. You definitely saw that too, blood on both hands. Yes, sir. I mean, I know what you're going to say. Only one of Mr. McGilded's gloves has any sign of blood on it. That's right. The thing is, as far as I remember, sir, when I looked down and saw Mr. McGilded sitting beside the other fellow, I don't believe he was wearing any gloves, sir. He wasn't wearing these gloves? That's correct, sir. I saw the blood on both his bare hands quite clearly. true that the dark-colored stain on the dark leather gloves wouldn't have been easy to see. I should point out, the police officer who apprehended the accused on the night in question reported that there was no trace of blood on Mr. McGilvett's gloved hands. There wasn't blood on his hands? This is puzzling indeed. This must be significant somehow, I'm sure of it. I didn't actually see anything myself, no, not until I came to that screen. You didn't see anything? Yes, sir, that is to say, no, sorry, I didn't. Very sorry about what I said before, sir, very sorry, yes. It was very wrong of me to make up stories and say I saw him stab the man. Wouldn't you agree, sir? I know what you're insinuating, but I certainly wasn't making up stories. Still, to say you saw nothing isn't right either, is it? No, sir, I saw nothing at all. Mr. Beppo, you were driving your horses. At the very least, you must have enjoyed a good view of London streets, no? Oh, please, you didn't even see that. It was so cold that night, you see, it was all I could do to keep from passing out, sir. Yes, my head was fairly frozen solid, sorry to say, sir. It seemed prudent to avoid travel on the last omnibus service of London's cold winter nights. Beppo! Anyway, the fact remains there can't have been anyone else inside that carriage or we all would have seen it. And everything you saw of the incident was through the skylight on the roof of the omnibus? That's right, it was fiercely cold that night, but the glass wasn't frosted over. Yes, I remember I was shivering, it was so bitter. Trial begs the question why the pair of you were sitting on the roof deck in the first place. I don't know about this young fellow, but I couldn't enter the cabin. Oh, why not? It was locked from the inside. I tried knocking, but no one opened the door. It was locked? That's right, and it's a public bus service, for pity's sake. That's not what I call fair play. Yes, I had exactly the same experience. I tried knocking, but the gent inside just gestured at me to clear off. I had no choice but to climb up to the roof deck and look down longingly to the warm cabin below. Well, I can assure you I wasn't just looking down, I was glaring long and hard. That's precisely why I can tell you with absolute confidence, if there was anyone else at all in that cabin, I would have noticed. Equivocally, I would say. I'm not sure about these two witnesses. Could they really have seen everything inside the cabin through the skylight? They might not have been able to. Allow me to confirm one thing, Mr. Fairplay. You were riding this omnibus and witnessed the events in the cabin through the skylight and the floor of the upper deck. Is that right? That's right, yes. In that case, there's a portion of the cabin interior that would have been out of sight from you. What? By golly, really? Obviously, at this stage we can't say for sure, but the possibility cannot be denied that at the time of the incident there could have been another passenger in the enclosed cabin of the omnibus. Enough hypothetical meandering, my Japanese friend. Prosecution demands that you substantiate your claims. After all, scene of the crime is here, in the flesh. Very well, I will uphold the prosecution's demand. I will identify the area on this cross-sectional plan of the omnibus. Where exactly in the omnibus are you suggesting this potential extra passenger could have been situated? Well, it would be in these seats that are directly under the one that lets you view the skylight. Both row of seats on the roof face in the direction of travel, as the seats in the enclosed cabin face each other, which means the visible part of the cabin, which passengers on the roof deck can see through the skylight, is as I've drawn here. That's right, my lord, as you can see, the seat opposite the one on which the victim and his attacker were sitting is obscured from view. In other words, if someone had been sitting on that seat, it's quite possible that these witnesses would have been completely unaware of it. Garg!
Objection!
It's quite possible some phantom was sitting there. Your Nipponese have a forbidding habit of obscuring the truth with ambiguity. Concur with the prosecution's rejoinder, in a British court of law, evidence is paramount. Cannot entertain this conjecture, counsel, unless you're able to put a name to this mysterious passenger to whom you allude. Can you, Mr. Naruhodo? I honestly don't know. Who could it have been? Could have been the other seat, which was out of sight from witnesses on the roof deck. I don't think we can prove it, right? Like, presumably Lady First and Bruce Fairplay were both on the roof. We already know the victim and our guy were at least in that cabin. Maybe it's possible that Magnus McGilded was I have no idea. I have literally no idea. But as a proud citizen of the Japanese Empire, you look to the sky and walk on. And as you're all signs of tears are gone, go on. This isn't just a case of going on, Miss Susato. Alright then, I'll go on. The defense would like to put forward a name. I'm gonna go ahead and save before this happens because I have no idea who it would be. You're a fool. That response was a desperate attempt by a man who has no notion of his own limitations. A toast to hard lessons not yet learned. Let's not delay, counsel. The defense is still to name the passenger in the other seat. This could be it. This could be the chance I've waited for to turn the trial in my favor. On that night, on the night of the murder, the person occupying the seat in the omnibus cabin that was obscured from view was... So let me like walk through this and rule people out. It's not either of the witnesses, because if one of them was lying about being on the roof deck, the other would also not be able to, you know, the other would be like, hey, you're lying. The driver of the bus, we have seen the driver's seat on the roof. It would be very weird for the driver of the bus to be inside. The victim obviously can't have been the third person. Accusing the other prosecutor would be funny. Person occupying the seat in the omnibus cabin that was obscured from view was... I'm gonna try saying Magnus? Passenger in the enclosed cabin that a witness on the roof failed to see has to have been Mr. Magnus McGilded. Mr. McGilded? What are you talking about, counsel? That's the name of the defendant.
Objection!
There we go. I desecrate this chamber by smashing my hallowed chalice. Do forgive the discourtesy. Lord Van Zeeks. People talk of those tiny island nations in the Far East as having a learning and culture of their own. You see, they use the terms ill-advisedly. What are you trying to say? Let me explain in terms that even a student of an artless backwater such as yourself might understand. When the bloody scene unfolded, the victim and his assailant were sitting side by side. Multiple witnesses have attested to that fact. It's the very premise on which this case is built. But that premise may be wrong. What? If the victim really was sitting beside Mr. McGilded, it creates an inconsistency that can't be reconciled in any way. What inconsistency, counsel? The defendant's gloves, my lord. Both witnesses made the same testimony. They claimed that there was blood on both hands of the person sitting next to the victim. Though we know the truth to be otherwise, only one glove bears the glory remains. The point is, even in the face of this irrefutable evidence, both witnesses have maintained their stance. So their testimony remains unchanged. Exactly, they both adamantly swear that they clearly remember seeing blood on both hands of the assailant. In short, their memory of events is correct, and their testimony reveals the truth. There was somebody else sitting beside the victim that night, a third party we have yet to identify. And the victim's blood was on that passenger's hands, both of them. And who was this third party? Obviously, the true culprit. Extraordinary. Order, order, order! What exactly are you postulating? The defense's postulation is just that, nothing more than conjecture. The witnesses have clearly stated that they saw the accused. But when elaborating on his testimony, Mr. Fairplay said that the two of them were wearing hats and I couldn't exactly make out their faces. Yes, the tops of their heads were obscured by the roof. I could see the rest of them though. Yes, that's right, both gents were most certainly hatted. Hatters do tend to notice such things, sir. What particular styles of hat did the two gentlemen sport, Mr. First? I'm afraid I don't remember. You call yourself a hatter. The style of hat makes no difference. There's no third passenger in that cabin. How can you be sure? Because if there had been, the accused, Mr. McGilded, would undoubtedly have offered to depose the fact. Unless that is, you are proposing an even more preposterous explanation? That the accused failed to even notice the presence of the true culprit in the very cabin in which he traveled? That's right, if there was another person traveling in the enclosed cabin of the omnibus, it's conceivable that Mr. McGilded would have been unaware of it. Or there is clearly a simple solution to this problem. Bring the accused, Mr. McGilded, to the stand. Well, what say you, counsel? Prosecution objects, my lord. On what grounds? As a suspect, he will have already made a full statement to police. But what if there's some reason why he's unable to speak freely? Magnus McGilded is no uneducated ruffian. But it indeed turns out the man has been withholding information. You can be sure it will have been a most deliberate act. Counsel for the defense, what is your opinion? My lord, should we ask Mr. McGilded to testify or not? So because the prosecution doesn't want this, I think we want this. Demand his testimony. The defense would like to call Mr. McGilded to the stand. In that case, I would like to hear the opinion of the jury. Yes, I need a little time to consider this. If you ask me, I think we should hear what Mr. McGilded has to say. Get the man out here, I say. It would be utterly illogical not to hear his testimony. When something needs doing, get it done. That's how I run things at the guild. Hearing what the patron of my favorite little park has to say, oh yes, that would be lovely. Yes, the jury says the man must be heard. Very well, the court will hear the defendant's testimony. Bailiff, show the defendant to the stand at once. Now maybe what actually happened that night will finally become clear. Let proceedings be resumed. Mr. McGilded, have you been listening to the discourse of the day? To be sure I have, my lord. There are now two matters on which the court desires to hear from you. The first is whether or not there was a third party with you in the omnibus cabin as proposed by the defense. The second, that if such a person was indeed present, why did you conceal that fact from the police? Egad, no, 'tis not my nature to hide anything at all. Just answer the questions, please. The truth of the matter is, I've been desperate about this all along. Do I tell yous all, or keep me mouth shut? Tell us what, Mr. McGilded? The fine fellow representing me is absolutely right. In the carriage on the night with myself and the other man, there was another passenger. It's true. Aye, and 'twas me who helped the little urchin get away after it all happened. You what? No, Magnus McGilded, that convenient excuse can't save you now. I'm truly sorry, so I am, Lord Van Zeeks. I'm sure you'll be wanting to know why I said nothing when I was taken in by the police. I do be having a very good reason, I assure you, which was... oh, the little child was just in the wrong place at the wrong time and not in any way involved, you see. What? If the police had known the wee one was there, they'd have assumed she'd done it. They'd have hauled her into this here courtroom just like myself. I was only trying to spare her that. Young hearts and young minds are easily damaged, my lord. And who was this young child of whom you speak? That I don't know. You don't know? Aye, well, the wee ting just happened to be in the carriage that night. I never saw her before or since. I have absolutely no reason to believe this man. The prosecution calls for the witness's statements to be disregarded by the court. You know, I wouldn't be surprised. The urchin isn't here in this courtroom as we speak, listening to the proceedings. What? Ah, smoke! Ah, fire! There's a fire! Look, someone's trying to get away. Cough after them. It's no use. Cough, cough. Can't see anything. What's going on? Careful, Mr. Naruhodo. Cover your face. Bailiff, don't let the accused escape. Secure the omnibus. I hereby call an emergency recess. Bailiff, ensure the defendant is in custody and clear the courtroom. We were hurriedly removed from the smoke-filled courtroom by the bailiff, amid scenes of chaos as people stumbled over one another in desperation to flee the chamber. We had no idea what was happening. All we knew was that, for the time being at least, the trial was suspended. And on that note, I'm going to call it a night. Thank y'all for hanging out. It was a lot of fun. I'll be back on Wednesday for more Persona 4 Golden, and then on... I actually might not be streaming this weekend. Let me double check. Yeah, this weekend I probably won't be streaming, but I will be back on the Monday, I think. Monday's the 31st, right? Yeah, Monday's the 31st. So I'll be back with more of this on Monday. Maybe I'll try to stream some Yu-Gi-Oh stuff anyway during the week or something. We'll see. Anyway, the next time you hear from me, it'll be Persona on Wednesday. So I'll talk to you then.